In case you've been living under a rock for the past few months, although it would probably be for the best, Cartoon Network rebooted the Powerpuff Girls, and so far, it has been a catastrophe. Seriously, this might be the worst series I've ever seen in a while. I can't think of any other cartoon that pisses me off more than this pitiful excuse for a reboot. Usually when people want to crap about this show, they usually talk about the episode Painbow. And admittedly, I don't like that episode as well. And I think that's the worst for now. But there is one episode that they aired recently and it offended me in so many ways. Bubbles of the Opera. From what I can tell, it's a parody of a movie called Phantom of the Opera. And although I haven't watched that movie, I'm not sure if I would have liked this episode even if I did. The episode starts off with, what would you expect from this show? Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup shoving their exaggerated personalities to our faces.
Professor, which says future elected official? Fire truck red or candy apple red? I think I'll go with rocket red for perseverance in the face of adversity.
Ow! Stop! What's the point? School photos are the worst. No one ever looks good in them.
Yeah, no one but you know who. Oh my! Is it school picture day?
You know, I'm not an expert on character development, but how is turning a character into the most exaggerated, stereotypical, and annoying version of himself anyway character development?
I completely forgot.
So the story for this episode is, well, the girls are going to take a picture for, picture day, and Bubbles never takes a bad picture, and, well, you would probably predict she's going to take a bad picture, which is really not the worst premise in the world. Well, I mean, I would prefer seeing the girls beat the crap out of a monster, but like I said, it's not the worst premise in the world. However, the execution was as horrendous as the previous episodes of the Powerpuff Girls that I've seen. My problem is undeniably with the photographer.
You're not Miguel.
Nope, I'm his replacement. I just got promoted from the cafeteria.
Wow, I never thought managers could be that dumb. I mean, what lunatic would hire someone who'd work at the cafeteria to be a photographer?
Kid, any dum-dum can work a camera these days.
I don't know what's more offensive, the fact that they're saying that professional photographers are not needed, or the fact that they're basically admitting that even if she wasn't a professional photographer, she could have still taken a good picture, which she didn't.
No way! You took a bad school photo?
So Bubbles, devastated that she took a bad picture, cries more than that time she thought the professor was dead in the original series. So the solution to make Bubbles happy? Get a new look. How does that work? I'm not sure, but I'm not sure I even care. And then something very odd happened. The girls didn't have enough money to pay that hairstyle, so instead he called that idiot photographer from school.
Hello? You again.
How did you get this job?
Oh, come on! Any dum-dum with a pair of scissors can cut hair.
Again with the insulting of other professions. Okay, I get that that's a joke, so I'm just gonna let that one slide and head to the biggest issue. What are the odds of the same person who took a bad picture to Bubbles ends up doing a bad haircut to Bubbles as well? What are the odds? And now Bubbles is even more devastated because her hair is ruined, and Buttercup, being a complete genius, gives Bubbles makeup that will give her an allergic reaction. You see, a normal sister wouldn't do that, but because Bubbles has to look as ugly as possible, she does it anyway.
Am I not the cute one anymore?
The cute one?
Yeah, you know, Blossom is the smart one, Buttercup is the cool one.
That's not exactly true. Blossom is the commander and the leader, Bubbles is the joy and the laughter, and Buttercup is the toughest fighter. So anyway, in this episode's pathetic attempt to make Bubbles as ugly as possible, she has a little accident and she ends up injured. May I remind you that Bubbles busts into walls of buildings pretty much every time she fights crime.
Keep driving! For the love of humanity, keep driving! I'm a monster!
Later on, Bubbles overreacts over her disfigured face and unnecessarily and unreasonably antagonizes her sisters. And then we get to see some pretty out of place scenery. But this is a parody of Phantom of the Opera, so I'm probably not getting it because I haven't watched that movie.
Cast out by society, shunned, rejected.
It was just a bus full of kids freaking out over your face. That's not enough to say that the entire world is rejecting and outcasting you.
I will have my vengeance. There's only one place I can go now.
Okay, let me get this straight. You're about to partner up with one of your biggest enemies simply because you're ugly. This is undeniably why this episode offends me. We actually see one of our heroes teaming up with one of the most vicious villains because of a very, very lousy reason. Also, do you guys remember Mojo Jojo's unique way of talking?
The Easter Bunny hides
eggs, which are generally regular eggs which have been boiled in the hottest of water and then decorated in a vinegar-based dye by placing... Ow!
Well, they don't have that anymore, which is a little strange given that that was probably the funniest thing about Mojo Jojo. And this show is leaned towards comedy than action, so you would expect them to keep that trope, but they didn't. So now Mojo and Bubbles team up and summon animals to destroy the city of Townsville because, again, Bubbles is ugly. That's her motivation. So the animals naturally destroy Townsville, so Blossom and Buttercup show up to stop Bubbles.
There is only dark bubbles.
Oh, dark bubbles. Wow, you really changed it up there.
Okay, I can't take this anymore. Show, please stop making Buttercup throw some very lame, sarcastic jokes. They're not funny. As Blossom and Buttercup try to stop Bubbles, Bubbles sends her snake henchmen to tie them up. And then we get to see even more disturbing dark Bubbles scenes. And then Bubbles decides, you know what? I'm going to destroy my sisters. Look, I understand very little, but I understand why she's mad at the society, but why is she mad at her sisters? They were the only one that are trying to help her and not discriminating her. So in order to prevent Bubbles from killing them, Blossom and Buttercup try to say up a couple of things to calm her down, which most of them don't make much sense.
Bubbles, what are you doing? This isn't you. This is me. You made me this.
No, they didn't. It was that stupid photographer. They're just responsible for the allergic reaction.
No, you're the best sister in the world. Remember when I wiped out on my skateboard and you took care of me?
Or when I had spinach in my teeth and everyone made fun of me, so you put spinach in your teeth too?
See, this is what confuses me. What exactly is making Bubbles upset? Is it because she's ugly or because she thinks she has no place in the world? Be a little more subtle. So Bubbles realizes she made a mistake and she doesn't want to be dark Bubbles anymore, stops Mojo Jojo and ends it all.
I'm sorry, guys. I had no idea I'd let my identity become so defined by being cute.
So we've reached the life lecturing part. And all we had to do is go through Bubbles conveniently becoming ugly, antagonizing her sisters, shining away from society, becoming dark Bubbles, and teaming up with her vicious enemy. Did the writers even think this through? I mean, they really wanted to reach this life lecture that they would pretty much write anything.
Surface, you're like terrifying. So much better than being cute.
I knew this episode reminded me of something. Is this the plot of Bubbles Vicious?
Hardcore! Really?
Wow, you guys had the balls to rip off one of my favorite episodes of the Powerpuff Girls. Bravo! I really don't like you guys. This episode might not be worse than Paintball, but it offended me more than Paintball. The rest of the episodes of the Powerpuff Girls are sloppy, but they don't piss me off more than this one. I think what really bothers me was how Bubbles became evil simply because she didn't look good. I mean, how am I supposed to respect her after this? Bubbles is my favorite Powerpuff Girl, so when I see her do bad things for no good reason, it irritates me, which is why this episode is the one that undeniably annoys me the most. I have so many issues with this show, but I'm not going to bring up all those issues on this video because I just wanted to speak about this particular episode. I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye for now.